Whew. I just got done playing volleyball, guys, with a big group of friends, and feeling tired. Excuse me. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be doing Hearthstone today. I may save it for tomorrow or the day after if I do it at all. I'm still exploring different types of streams to do. So yeah, stay tuned, I guess, for any of that. It's hard for me to say how much time I should be spending streaming. Like, it could be seen as another form of income, but my channel is just not that level yet. Simply put, I don't have the amount of followers, I don't have the amount of donations, subs, etc., etc. Which is why I keep saying, thank you so much for that support. We're going to take a look again today at Read Mindfulness Special. I think I'm just going to have a mindfulness stream today. When I was playing volleyball, I hurt my thumb, so I want to get some ice on it. I just hit the ball wrong. Yeah. Someone was talking a little bit yesterday about the author, and I see both sides. At the time, I really wanted to know who the author was because I was and am still of the firm belief that writers should get credit for their work. Artists should get credit for their work. My chatter, I think, was saying something like, oh, well, it wasn't written by a licensed psychologist, so I don't really believe in the validity of it. And I would say I disagree with that statement to some extent. And part of the reason for that is because of some of the reasons I mentioned yesterday, that it's very difficult to become a licensed psychologist. That's number one. Number two, just because someone, and this is something I should have said yesterday, just because someone is not a licensed psychologist doesn't mean their thoughts, ideas, and opinions don't have value. They may not meet your thresholds for significance based on your predetermined criteria, but they could still have value, right? Like how many spiritual leaders had doctoral degrees in psychology? Like, basically none. Like, did Gandhi have a degree? No. Like, he didn't have a degree in psychology. Did Buddha have it? No. None of them had any of those degrees. And yes, the degrees, like, I'll tell you from experience, the degrees do represent something. They represent knowledge, their acquisition of it. As someone who's graduated college twice, like, those degrees represent something. They represent the time that you spent invested in your core subject of discipline, which in my case is business and education. Would I have had one or more degrees in psychology given the choice? Perhaps, maybe. But at the time, psychology classes were at capacity. Like, it was extremely difficult to get seats in those classes. And yeah, I don't know. I graduated with my degree in business partly as a reflection of the economic turmoil that the world was going through at the time. The uncertainty of how everything was going to be. And yeah, I'd say I learned quite a bit about the world of business. Was I able to fully leverage everything that I learned in the program, my business program? Um, some ideas, some concepts. Some concepts I may never have the ability to use because it just didn't align with my own career goals, my own vision. Like, I've never been an accountant. I've never been a financier. Part of the reason for that is because I wasn't really motivated in those areas. I've always been the kind of guy who really likes the idea of loving what I do for work. And it hasn't always played out that way. Like, it hasn't always, like, I haven't always been in the position, the privileged position of being able to do something I love. If I look back, like, on my work history, all my jobs, it's like the common theme is me supporting others, helping others. And that somewhat goes back to this. That's, I think, one of the main core ideas that links everything together. It's like me helping and supporting. Yeah. I would say, as a brief recap, I wish the author was given credit in this. I wish it wasn't necessary yesterday for me to have to research the book, the magazine, to figure out who the author was. I'm led to believe that the author, as I said, of this magazine was the same person who wrote the blog. I might be wrong about that assertion, but I think credit, what's the saying? Like, credit is as it should be due. Like, yeah, I think you guys know what I mean. Like, people should receive credit for their works. Okay, but let's dive into mindfulness today. And take a deep breath in. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Okay. We're going to look at keeping the peace. Yeah, we'll just look at keeping the peace today. Maybe you're sitting at the dinner table while a family member advocates a course of action you feel to be unwise. Or you've waxed lyrical about a political passion of yours to a colleague only to realize they hold a completely different opinion on the subject. As a brief aside on this subject, I would say keep your cards close to your chest, especially if someone is expressing their religious or political beliefs. If they do not align with your own, I would say just, like, you don't need to have a full-on argument with them, but yeah, you can say, keep it factual, basically. Try to just inform without throwing out too many contrary opinions, because I think it's when people are very opinionated and they start expressing opinion here, opinion there, I think that's when a lot of the trouble starts. It's based on feelings and not facts. When that happens, get back to facts. People can't argue with the facts. That's where research comes in. What tends to be your default mechanism? Do you make hasty retreat from the choppy conversational waters or dive in and tackle them head on? Those who are conflict avoidant might tend to opt for the former, only to be left with a niggling feeling that they didn't argue their case and do justice to their views. Others happily voice their opinions, loudly convince they're right, and a companion can even perhaps should be persuaded to change their beliefs. It's difficult to find the middle ground. So what can you do? Here are a few tips on how to navigate tricky situations without firing any shots and with everyone's integrity kept intact. Okay, number 1, embrace your wrongness. Humans tend to think they're logical creatures. They like to be right and often assume that they've used good judgment to come to their conclusions. Researchers have found, however, that people's decision-making process may not be so logical after all. Antonio Damasio, neuroscientist and author of The Strange Order of Things, so Antonio Damasio there, Damasio, found that patients who had damaged the part of the brain where emotions are processed struggled to make decisions. Basically, as another explanation here. A long time ago in high school, I went through a program known as the IB program. Long story short, it's a very rigorous program that's designed to acclimate students to an international standard. And we basically took challenging coursework. One of the courses I took as a part of that IB or International Baccalaureate program in high school was called the Theory of Knowledge. The class was extremely early in the morning, and I was, I think, half asleep for maybe half of the classes. Maybe not quite that many, but I remember dozing off at least once or twice during that course tenure because of the time of day that it was at. Fought as I could to stay awake. And one of the concepts that we talked about was justifications. It's called the Theory of Knowledge was a class. And the question was, how do we know what we know? And another concept that was explored in the class was tools for forming arguments. On what basis can you justify your own conclusions? We looked at stuff like logical fallacies and things like that. But 2 ways of knowing were appeal to emotion and appeal to logic. And that basically is how people make decisions. I'd say for the most part. Most people will use emotions to make decisions. I felt it was the right way to go, or I felt it was the wrong way to go. How do you feel about it? And then the other line of thinking is appeal to logic. I made the decision based on the facts that I had at the time. And there are, of course, pros and cons to each approach. Sometimes we may use a combination of approaches to make a well-informed decision. They have a tendency, this suggests that emotions play a role in the stance that you take in an argument. It's also been found that people operate according to a confirmation bias. They have a tendency to favor information that confirms their beliefs, and disfavor evidence that contradicts them. I refer to this as the echo chamber effect, or the tunnel vision effect. Sometimes people can also refer to this as the sixth sense effect. People only see and hear what they want to see and hear. And sometimes that gives them a narrow worldview and a very ignorant mindset, simply put. I would say, like I said, you can try to explain to them different perspectives, different viewpoints, and that may be all you can do to them, for them. Try to explain other ways of seeing this situation, the topic, whatever it is. Try to gather as much information as you can, because oftentimes one source, whatever source that it is, doesn't always have all the information, especially if it's like a breaking news story. Papers print things that sell. They want to sell papers, so what are they going to do? They're going to use sensationalism. And that can have its own downside. Sometimes this can also be referred to as the yes man effect. People just like to be surrounded by people who just naturally agree with them. Yeah. It's like, okay, yes, okay. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. How do you think the Nazi Party rose to power? Like, how do you think Joseph Stalin rose to power? Like, he eliminated everybody else who was opposed to his policies. Yeah. Catherine Schultz is the author of Being Wrong, Adventures in the Margin of Error. She explains that it's the nature of the human mind to make things up, to be imaginative and creative, and for that reason, being wrong is a part of the fundamental human condition. I would neither agree nor fully disagree with this statement. I would agree on the sense that lack of knowledge, lack of knowing could be considered a part of the human condition, but humans have the potential and ability to overcome that burden or obstacle. How do they do this? By learning, the process of acquiring knowledge. Imagination does play an important role. As I learned in Sapiens, it is the defining factor that separates Neanderthals from Sapiens. The ability to make stuff up, essentially, to tell stories. And sometimes that does have value, especially when you're writing a fiction piece. But sticking to the facts, I think, is a better way to go. Catherine points out that people are brought up to place great importance on being right. Their entire school of life is often based on getting good grades, and their career is about not failing. This can lead people to feel a desperate need to be right. And when they are faced with someone who has a different opinion, they might also feel a need to change their mind. helps to have a moral compass or a standard by which to go from. Standard. There will be people who will want to challenge your beliefs, challenge your code, but it's, at the end of the day, it's your code. It's your own sense of moral character and integrity. People can't really change it. It's always going to be the same. Catherine says, it's possible to step outside the feeling of being right, and if you do so, it's the single greatest moral, intellectual, and creative leap that you can make. When you are open to the possibility that you might be wrong, you can be more flexible and more open to listening to other people's opinions, even though you may not agree with them. Who really knows which of you is wrong anyway? Perhaps it's even both of you. It's like the concept of knowing, right? There's this age-old saying, knowledge is power, is the saying. And that's why I recommend people to continue learning new things. It's like continue challenging yourself, continue reading magazines, reading books, heck, even reading news articles. Try to diversify your sources is another strong recommendation I would make. Because some political parties have an agenda. And I'd say a lot of it is based on what the topic is. Perhaps they're both wrong. Yeah, there are plenty of controversial issues to discuss here, but something I mentioned yesterday is that cosmic perspective. It's like from a certain point of view, like life is meaningless. Our thoughts, opinions, things that we might think about a certain subject, topic, aren't really going to matter. Like if you look at history, if you look at how things map out, looking at the bigger picture, that will tell you a lot. Like, it may feel like the end of the world, but the world's going to keep spinning, short of some cataclysmic event. And yeah, we haven't seen anything like that yet. Nuclear war, zombie apocalypses, all seem to be in the realm of satire right now. Like people joke about it. People joke about it because the world keeps spinning, keeps turning. Life goes on. It doesn't stop. It never stops. All right. In the picture, there are several people. There's a close-up on a guy's face. He has a purple, what appears to be a teardrop coming out of his mouth. He has dark hair and skin, dark eyes. You can only really see his face and his hand. His hand is pointing to a woman. Her back is to us. She has her hair in a ponytail. She's wearing a pink shirt. Above her, a person is facing us. You can only see their mouth and their white and yellow striped shirt. There's a man. He's got a pole, and at the top of the pole is a heart. Almost like a flag. He's got blue overalls on, and he's got a blue, white, and a white and blue striped shirt on, long sleeve. On the next page, there are several more teardrop-shaped colors represented. Green and blue, pink, and yellow. Some of them are overlapping. And the blue and yellow do somewhat make out their unique color combination of green. In the middle of these teardrop shapes, there is a woman. She's got a skirt on and a long sleeve shirt, and her hair is in a ponytail, and she's holding up an umbrella. It could be an umbrella that is fashioned to look like a pair of lips. She has red shoes on. To her right, there is a red-skinned person, perhaps a man, a small nose, an open mouth, and out of his mouth comes one of the teardrop shapes. He's got his hands in a kind of like the shadow-like shape you'd make to make a rabbit from the shadow. And he has a neutral expression on his face. He has a white and green shirt. Okay. We're getting close to the end. This magazine, guys. About 20 more pages. Read the Mindfulness special. The key takeaway today from the book was about voicing opinions, keeping the peace, as it's called. There's like a very old story about like 3 blind men who stumble across an elephant, and they're, laying their hands along the elephant's body, and one is grabbing the trunk, and he says, "Oh, I think it's a snake." And one's grabbing his tail, and says, oh, I think horse or something like that. Hey, let me make sure I'm telling it right. Okay, apparently it's a book. John Godfrey. I don't know if this is the original version. 1872 is when it came out. And I think that it is. Let me move my phone's up. I have better lighting in my face. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it says Hindu fable. The Blind Man and the Elephant. Yeah, I think I can read it on stream. I don't think that it's gonna be like any kind of copyright violation or anything like that. Blind Man and the Elephant, Hindu fable by John Godfrey Saxe, S-A-X-E. The Blind Man and the Elephant. 'Twas 6 men of Indostan, not Indonesian, Indostan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall. So he's like, hey, I think it's a wall, touching the side. And the second, feeling of the tusk, cried, ho, what have we here? So very round and smooth and sharp. To me, 'tis mighty clear, the wonder of an elephant is very like a spear. It's like a spear, the second one says. The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, thus boldly up and spoke. I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a snake. The fourth reached out his eager hand and felt about the knee. What most this wondrous beast is like is mighty plain, quoth he. 'Tis clear enough, the elephant is very like a tree. Part 6. The fifth who chanced to touch the ear said, even the blindest, abbreviated, even the blindest man can tell what this resembles the most. Deny the fact who can, the marvel elephant is very like a fan. He's touching the elephant's big, broad ears. 7. The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than, seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, I see, quoth he, the elephant is like a rope. And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion exceedingly stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong. Moral. So oft in theologic wars the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen. So when I heard this story, I always thought it perfectly summarized human ignorance. None of them And the way I remember the poem, it's that none of them knew the true nature of what it was they were touching. Like, one guy thinks it's a spear, one guy thinks it's a rope, one guy thinks it's a wall, one guy thinks it's a snake. None of them really know what it actually is. And I think that this mindfulness reading we had from today is very much the same way. It has the same core message and meaning. So the moral of the story is that humans have a tendency to claim absolute truth based on their limited subjective experience, as they ignore other people's limited subjective experiences, which may be equally true. Another good story I can recommend on this topic is Aristotle's The Cave, the Allegory of the Cave. Let me make sure I'm attributing it correctly. I thought it was Aristotle. Socrates, sorry. Yeah, Socrates. The Allegory of the Cave. Or Plato's Cave, okay, that's why I got confused. Is an allegory presented by the Greek philosopher Plato in his work Republic to compare the effect of education and the lack of it in our nature. So people only really know what they're exposed to. That's the reason why teachers are in constant demand. Because it's a way of exposing people to new ways of thinking. I think that's far more important than anything you could actually teach in a day-to-day lesson or curriculum. It's like teaching people new ways of thinking is perhaps one of the most important jobs of a teacher, because that is how we shed light on what those people in the cave perceive in the Allegory of the Cave. It's like the concept of Allegory in the Cave is like people see these shadows, see like the shadows of the light on the wall, and that is all they really see. It's like you go in there with a lantern or something, you light it up for them. That's how I've always seen it. It's like lighting it up for them is something that you have the power to do. Yeah, in the story they're prisoners, but I think that it can be extended to mankind in general. The shadows, yes, cast on the wall. That's what they see. And it's like the shadows are somewhat a reflection of the true nature of the world. The way it actually is. Yeah, hopefully I gave you guys a lot of good supplemental reading information here, things that you might not have already known on the topic of arguments, theories, explanations, different views and opinions. The Allegory of the Cave and The Blind Man and the Elephant are what I recommend on this topic. As always, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for staying strong, my storm champions. Seek shelter, take shelter. Let's weather this storm. Alright, Stormer Show signing out.